I'd like to call to order the meeting of February 8th of the Noblesville Common Council. If we'd all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Davis, would you please lead us this evening?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Ms. Lees, will you do the roll call?
Mr. Ayr.
Present.
Mr. Boyce.
Present.
Mr. Davis.
Present.
Mr. O'Connor.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
Here.
Mr. Schwartz. Mr. Smith.
Present.
Mr. Sparks.
Present.
Ms. Wiles.
Present.
Madam President, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Moving on to the approval of the minutes from the January 25th meeting.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. All in favor, raise your right hand. 8-0. Moving on to the approval of the agenda. We have no changes to it at this point. So may I have a motion of approval?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, 8-0. Terrific. Petitions or comments by citizens who are present. I do not have any slips, but if anyone would like to make a comment, please fill out a slip there on the table just as you come in the door, and then present it to the clerk's table, and then we'll be happy to hear you. Moving on to council committee reports. We've got roads and public safety, and Mr. Boyce is going to do both of those for us this evening.
Thank you, Madam President. The Council Roads Committee met on the 4th of February. Mr. Greg O'Connor, Mr. Brian Ayr, and myself were all present. There were quite a few different things that were discussed, but I'll go over a few of them. One of them we talked about was the paving, and it's very interesting. I thought it was nice for us to talk about that. The way we get our roads paved is at the beginning of the year, then they go out and we have an engineering team that goes out and studies all of the roads and they rate them. And in the past, then they have been at about a 4 or 5 level over the last 4 or 5 years. And now we have gotten all of them up to a 5 or 6 level. So we are definitely increasing the quality of our roads. So that was one of the things I found interesting. Kerrigan Road over Morris, I know that I've seen on social media, there's been some people that have been upset with how bright that bridge is. And so I will say that now there has now been a dimmer switch that has been installed on that bridge, and it is more dim than it was. So I think that the social media said that you would get a tan as you drove across it. You don't need to worry about that anymore. And then last update is Whitcomb Ridge and Oakmont is going to be construction this fall. I know there's been some question about that, and that's going to be a big roundabout that is going to, I think, benefit the city quite a bit. Especially with Hinkle Creek and the timing that Hinkle Creek runs and everything. So that's pretty much the Roads Committee. The minutes are up if you have any other questions or want to read anything about it. And then today, the Public Safety Committee met. Mr. Mike Davis, Mr. Brian Ayr, and myself were present. And we talked an awful lot to both chiefs about their needs in the near future and how things are affecting them with regards to growth and also with regards to COVID, how it has slowed down a lot of our runs the last couple of years. But we think as we kind of start to come back out of that, then we probably will see growth there. So it was a very interesting meeting. We learned an awful lot about the future, and thank you, Mr. Knecht, for putting that together. Appreciate it. So.
Great. Any questions for Mr. Boyce for roads or public safety? Hearing none. Mr. Davis, share with us about the Finance Committee.
City Hall was closed last Thursday, so there was no meeting.
Thank you for your report. That's
All right, thank you very much.
Claims come with no recommendation
Okay,
because of that.
all right. So any other reports? We'll move on to the approval of claims.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the claims. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 8-0. Perfect. Moving on to previously discussed ordinance. Council to consider ordinance 0101-22, an ordinance for special consideration for the operation of a soccer facility in the corporate campus plan development district, a part of Washington Business Park at 9741 East 153rd Street. Ms. Shelton.
Good evening. As you may recall, this was introduced at your last meeting. It is a part of the Washington Business Park, which is located off of Cumberland Road. It is in the general area of FCMC. To the south of it is the Noblesville Business Park, and further to the north and east is basically the Cumberland Road Industrial Business Park also. Currently, this lot has under construction a building that contains approximately 162,000 square feet. It is a multi-tenant building. The request is to allow a indoor commercial recreational use in a portion of this building. Again, based on our use chart, it is a special consideration. It's a use that's allowed, but it may be one of those uses that takes additional scrutiny by either the Plan Commission or the council. Some of those things might have to do with parking or similar type of items. In this case, the Plan Commission did not have any additional stipulations added to the recommendation for approval. Again, other special considerations in this area that could be considered would be such things as an airport, a mini storage warehousing, a plant nursery, automobile rental, places of worship. Those are all also special consideration uses in this particular zoning area. Again, they're only going to take up a small portion of the building. It is basically to create 2 soccer fields, some training facilities, restrooms and some office areas. Again, this did come to you from the Plan Commission with a unanimous vote. There were 8 members present at that meeting. If you have any other questions, we do have a representative from Patch Development in the audience.
Any questions for Ms. Yelkin? Any questions for Patch Development? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion for ordinance 0101-22.
Madam President,
Mr. Smith,
I move to approve ordinance 010122.
Second.
it's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance 0101-22. This is a roll call vote. Ms. Lees.
Mr. Ayers?
Aye.
Mr. Boyce?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor?
Aye.
Mr. Peterson?
Abstain.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Sparks?
Aye.
Ms. Wiles?
Aye.
7 aye, 1 abstention. The ordinance is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is new ordinances for discussion. Council to consider ordinance 02-02-22, an ordinance to reestablish the cumulative capital development fund tax rate and establishing a public hearing. Mr. Spalding.
Move to introduce.
Second.
Madam President, members of the council, Jeff Spalding, CFO and Controller, and we have a series of items for you tonight that are mostly pretty routine in nature, and this is the first and maybe the easiest of them, and I've described this in the past, but one of the many funds that we have that makes up our total tax rate is the Cumulative Capital Development Fund, and under state law, it is set up in such a way that if you want to hold the tax rate the same as you've had it in the past, then you have to actually take an action by the council as opposed to just leaving it unchanged in the budget. Each year you have to do that. I could go into the nuances of why the state law does that, but I won't do that here. But in this case, this is just another annual ordinance to keep the tax rate for this fund at 5 cents. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of Mr. Spalding? All right.
Madam President,
Mr. Smith,
I move to establish a public hearing for ordinance number 02-02-22 at the next regular meeting.
Second.
it's been moved and seconded to establish a public hearing for ordinance 02-02-22 at our next meeting. All in favor, raise your right hand. 8-0. Council to consider ordinance 03-02-22, an ordinance to reestablish the fire cumulative capital fund tax rate and establishing a public hearing.
All right.
Move to introduce.
Second.
Mr. Spalding.
All right, well, this is very, very similar to the last item, although what's interesting about it is that it's a little bit more nuanced what we're doing here and a little bit less important. It's less significant, the action that we take here than the previous action. But in this case, what we're doing is we're establishing this cumulative fire capital fund tax rate at 3.33 cents, which is the maximum allowed in Indiana code. And it's not currently, you haven't reset it at that maximum rate in the past. For this year that we're in, it's set at 2 cents. Prior to that, we hadn't done any action on this, and it had drifted down to 1.6 cents. So what we're doing actually is getting this on the track where we're treating it like the previous item, and we're saying, hey, council, take an action each year, authorizing it to be set at the maximum rate, and then you're not relinquishing any authority. At the time of the budget, we will determine how much money needs to go into this fund and set the tax rate accordingly. Historically, we have not funded this fund at a 3-cent tax rate. We funded it something less, and I suspect that we will again, but we're putting it on the path where we're just going to come back annually, set it at the max, and then you have maximum flexibility, in the future. The last reason why this one matters less, you've heard about the max levy control that we have. This tax rate is within that max levy control. The other one is outside of it, but because it's within it, it has even less of an impact on the city's total tax rate. Nonetheless, that's what the request is, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Spalding? Nope. Okay.
Madam President,
Mr. Smith.
I move that we establish a public hearing for ordinance number 03-02-22 at our next regular meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to establish a public hearing for ordinance 03-02-22 at our next regular meeting. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. 8-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ordinance 04-02-22, it's my understanding that that is being postponed to our next meeting, correct? Okay. So could I have a motion to postpone this item until our next meeting?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. 8-0. With ordinance 05-2-22, this is also being postponed until our next meeting, so if I could have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to postpone ordinance 05-02-22 to our next meeting. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 8-0. Council to consider ordinance 06-02-22, an ordinance for the adoption of waivers regarding the land use category of industrial office with a sub-district overlay of secondary corridor for approximately 45 acres southwest of the intersection of 146th Street and Oleo Road.
Move to introduce.
Second.
Ms. Shelton.
The item before you, again, is located within the corporate campus plan development district. It is in an area that allows industrial flex-type office building uses. The applicant here is proposing on the 45 acres, as you can see outlined in the purple area here. That's the specific area that we are referring to. They're asking for several, I'm going to say several waivers from the underlying bulk standards. Some of these waivers include such things as, one of our requirements in there is that you cannot have, let's say, an ingress egress off of a arterial roadway. Well, this particular piece of property fronts onto arterial roadways. So if that waiver was never granted, this piece of property, the 45 acres, could never be developed. So the waivers that they are asking, they were listed, not only in the staff report, but also in the ordinance. Again, just very quickly, they asked for the elimination of the front yard setback along the arterial so that there wouldn't be any parking, loading, or vehicular used areas. So specifically, what that is in regards to, if I show you the site plan, and they are proposing 2 industrial flex buildings. One obviously is a little larger than the other. Internal to this will be truck parking area. But the first one would be that you could not have parking out here in front of this building because it fronts on a roadway. That was one of them. The elimination of parking islands. We require parking island every 10 feet. For every 10 spaces, you have to have a parking island. In this area here, where you will have semi-truck parking, doesn't make sense that we would require those types of things. They're also asking for a reduction of the perimeter landscaping. So basically, what we've got here is along this area and along this area, we have some easements that we cannot put landscaping in. They are exclusive easements to another utility company. So therefore, they cannot meet, I'm going to say, that 75% coverage that is required in the UDO. So that was another waiver that was being sought. Again, reduction of building-based landscaping. We require building-based landscaping on all 4 sides. You know, interior to the site where you've got, again, truck docks and truck parking, it doesn't make sense to, require that. One of the other ones, again, was the allowance of drive access that would occur more frequently than 1,000 linear feet. So what I will point out here is this is obviously the main entrance for the trucks. This here is the main entrance for, other individuals that may be doing something else in this building, like office workers or whatever. So that truck traffic is separated from all the other vehicular traffic. And that, again, that the parking area would not encroach into the peripheral buffer. Again, a little bit of this parking area along here actually encroaches into that peripheral buffer. So again, those are the waivers that were being sought. There was a public hearing held at the Plan Commission. Again, the Plan Commission did forward this with a favorable recommendation for adoption. This is an elevation of Building 1. This here is an elevation, well, it shows all sides of the elevation of Building 1. This here would be Building 2, which is the smaller of the 2 buildings. And again, these are the elevations of all sides of the building. Again, surrounding land uses, we have industrial type buildings in the area. We have some vacant property that hasn't been developed yet. To the south, immediately to the south of this, as you may recall, we have eventually two motels going into that area. And, eventually, I'm going to guess the very corner property there, will be developed in some similar fashion. Again, this is a part of the corporate campus. The comprehensive master plan, supports this type of a use. It had been reviewed by by the TAC committee. And basically, most of the items at TAC have already been addressed at this point. So it got sent to you with a favorable recommendation for adoption from the Planning Commission by a 9-0 vote.
Questions of Ms. Shelton?
I just want to
Mr.
comment.
Boyce?
Oh, go ahead, Amy.
No, I just, at the Planning Commission meeting, these were all couched as contradictions in our own code. A lot of these were things that were left over, residuals that obviously the parking and the semi-traffic, it'll just get torn up and look worse than what's intended to be there. So that's kind of how all these felt when we presented them to the Planning Commission.
Mr. Boyce?
I would just add, is this a spec building, or do we know if there's a tenant or anything? I'm just curious.
To my knowledge, there is not a tenant.
It's spec? Okay, thank you.
But they will both be built at the same time.
Okay.
Both buildings will be built simultaneously.
That was going to be my second question. Thank you, I was curious.
So you are welcome to come up and make a presentation if you would like to do so.
For the record, Russell Brown with the law firm of Clark Quinn Moses Scott and Gron, 320 North Meridian Street, Suite 1100 in Indianapolis. And I will follow Mike Howard's sage advice and not talk ourselves out of an approval tonight. This is approximately 500,000 square feet of total space when completed. Both buildings will be constructed simultaneously. Assuming that all goes well here in the next couple of weeks, hope to start moving dirt in the summer, this summer. So this would be a project that would happen very quickly. You hopefully will recognize some of these documents. This did come before you as an economic development project in the fall for tax abatement. So these renderings are part of the ordinance, so they are substantial conformance with these renderings as part of the request here tonight. So we are putting our money where our mouth is as it relates to these. We think this is the high quality that the city expects in this area of town, and so we're hopeful for your support over the next couple meetings.
Any questions, Mr. Brown? Mr. O'Connor?
Substantial completion estimated when?
About 13, 14 months, depending on supply chain issues.
You having trouble getting precast, tilt wall?
Greg said, yeah, tilt wall, ceilings,
We
and
had
steel.
a construction schedule, if we started June 1st, but I'm not sure we would be able to, but it would probably be July of the following year. It's because of some of the backlog.
Roofing.
Whether it's steel,
Right.
roofing, or
Could you please come up for the microphone so that we can capture it for those who are watching online and for recording purposes, please?
Greg Small, part of Equicore Properties, 650 East Carmel Drive. So the timeline, basically, if we start June 1st, would be probably July of 2023. But the plan is to do the whole entire development at once. So both buildings and all the development will be built basically simultaneously. That is the goal. And they are done on, we're going to do them on a speculative basis, obviously, if we get pre-leasing, leasing done. Of course, we hope, your economic development people will send us tenants. But happy to answer any other questions.
Any other questions of the district? Great. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Council to consider ordinance 07-02-22, an ordinance for a change of land use and sub-district category from commercial and secondary corridor to single-family land use with a sub-district overlay of mixed residential, all part of the Corporate Campus Plan Development District containing 31 acres adjacent to the northwest intersection of Greenfield Avenue and Bowden Road.
Move to introduce.
Second.
Ms. Shelton?
Good evening again. The item before you again is at the northwest corner of Bowden Road and Greenfield Avenue. It's a piece of property that we have kind of visited several times over the last few years. Most recently, there was a mixed-use development proposed for this same area. It had some commercial as well as some residential in it. These applicants are requesting a change of zoning, a change of the land use category, again, from commercial to single-family residential, and from the sub-district overlay of secondary corridor to what is known as mixed residential. The current land use category and overlay would not permit residential uses as they are proposing on this site. The applicants, again, intend to develop the 30 acres with townhomes and cottage homes. The townhomes and cottage homes, basically, there are 36 lots of cottage homes and 176 units of townhomes. If I can, great. It's not good when I just picked up the wrong set of plans here. But I can find the other set. So this right here is basically their proposed layout. In this area here to the south along Greenfield Avenue, Bowden Road, this is where the 36 cottage home units would be. Here's where the remainder units of the townhomes. As you can see, they basically have a lot of green space along Greenfield Avenue, as well as green space along Bowden Road. There is one entrance from each one of those roadways, which is a plus as opposed to what was originally proposed to be a mixed use, and we were having issues with some of the infrastructure. This item was before the Architectural Review Board. It did receive unanimous approval from the ARB as far as the type of structures. This right here is basically a sampling of their proposed elevations for the townhomes. This here would give you some idea of what the cottage homes could possibly resemble. Again, they also have proposed a sign, which is a part of their packet. Again, public hearing was held at the Plan Commission at their last meeting. It was sent forward with a favorable recommendation for adoption by a 9-0 vote. They also sought some waivers to this site. Those were a part of the ordinance again, as well as their bulk standards, again, a part of the ordinance. The comprehensive master plan shows this area as basically being, could be an urban center, which again would offer a diverse range of housing options, employment options, higher concentrations. As you may recall, farther to the south of this development, as you go down Bowden Road, that is a part of the overall project known as Hyde Development. That is an area that, again, will have some commercial uses, will have different types of residential uses, may have, those types of uses. So this kind of plays into that. Again, north of this are apartments, the Autumn Breeze apartment. To the west of this, you have Deer Creek subdivision. To the east of it, we got Ruoff Music Center. And again, to the south, we will have partially Hyde Park, and further south, you've got the Saxony Corporate Campus Development, as well as the Hamilton Town Center. So this kind of ties the area in cohesively. With that, I will ask if you have any questions of staff. If not, I know that Mr. Harden is here, as well as representatives from 4 Star.
Any questions of Ms. Shelton? All right. Mr. Harden, would you like to make a presentation?
Good evening, Madam President, members of the City Council. For the record, my name is Steve Harden. I'm a partner of the law firm of Fagery Drinker with offices here in Hamilton County, and I'm pleased to be here this evening with 4 Star, and Melissa Gerard is here from 4 Star. You might remember her from December 7th when we presented for first reader introduction here to the City Council. And as Joyce Ann mentioned, we appreciate Joyce Ann's Joyce Ann, she's over there on her next file probably, but appreciate her work on the project along with the rest of the planning team and the engineering team. She indicated we've had full staff support throughout the process. We had favorable unanimous recommendation from the Architectural Review Board. We had a neighborhood meeting, no remonstrance at the Plan Commission, unanimous favorable recommendation from the Plan Commission. And then we are back here this evening for you. We had a long presentation when we were here before, and you had the material, so we don't have anything else to add other than they're excited to be part of the community and look forward to moving forward with the project, and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have tonight. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Harden?
Madam President,
Mr. O'Connor?
Mr. Harden, good to see you.
Good to see you, sir.
Can you refresh my memory on the park area? What will be in there? Looks like bocce courts, but I don't know what that is exactly. I see a gazebo.
I'm going to take at face value you are sincere in your question.
Yeah,
This
I'm trying to
literally, this project has bocce ball courts because of your encouragement. And one of our pre-meetings when we talked about the amenities, we had some green space I think it is internally to the team, it's been referred as the O'Connor bocce ball courts. So there are bocce ball courts
Will there be a
planned.
plaque?
It literally, what's that?
Will there be a plaque?
We'll have a response for that in 2 weeks. But no, there's gathering spots, there's outdoor gathering spots, and it's still in the works on exactly the details of that, but the outdoor area that you see right here, that does have the bocce ball courts, and it literally is, you guys have an impact on projects when you look at it and you say, could you have green roofs or red roofs or bocce ball courts? And so they had the room for it, and so that's incorporated into the project. Thank you for the question.
No, you're welcome.
Any other questions for Mr. Hart?
Thank you very much.
See you in 2 weeks.
Thank
Thank you very much. Council to consider ordinance 08-02-22, an ordinance for the adoption of a preliminary development plan including waivers and stipulations for a single-family land use with a sub-district overlay of mixed residential, all a part of the corporate campus plan development district containing 31 acres adjacent to the northwest intersection of Greenfield Avenue and Bone Roads.
Move to introduce.
Second.
We probably should have talked about both of these together, so, okay. Any additional comments, Shelton?
No, there are no additional comments. The first item, again, was the change of zoning from what is commercial to the single-family with the different overlay. This is actually would be the adoption of the plans that we showed you.
Okay. Any questions of Shelton? Thank you. I'm assuming the presenter doesn't need to share anything else. Okay, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Proposed development presentation. Council to consider introductory information for proposed residential plan development on approximately 40 acres containing 75 single-family residential lots west of Pebblebrook Golf Course along East 191st Street to be known as Pebblebrook Crossing in Noblesville Township. Mr. Dabashewitz, good evening.
Thank you and good evening. For the record, my name is John Dabashewitz. I'm a land use professional with the law firm of Nelson and Frankenberger. We represent the petitioner, both Platinum Properties Management Company and Dries Homes. Present tonight on behalf of the applicant is Tim Walter of Platinum Properties, Randy McNutt, Dries Homes Division President, Lee Phillips, Dries Land Acquisition Manager, and Jim Schinnerberger, attorney with our office. As noted, the matter before you this evening is the introduction of the Pebblebrook Crossing residential community. Platinum Properties and Dries are proposing a neighborhood which after approximately 35 years would complete the establishment of residential communities which surround the existing Pebblebrook Golf Course. The subject real estate is highlighted on the aerial on display. It's approximately 41 acres in area. It's located on the south side of 191st Street and generally east of Moontown Road and west of and adjacent to the existing Pebblebrook Golf Course. As shown, uses surrounding the real estate include agricultural properties to the north on the north side of 191st Street. Northeast of the site is the Albany Ridge at Connor Crossing neighborhood. To the northwest and west of Moontown Road within the city of Westfield is the Schofield Farms residential community. To the immediate east, as I indicated, is the Pebblebrook Golf Course. On the other side of the golf course are both the Connor Crossing and Cottage Grove residential communities. To the south is the smaller Long Acre Farms subdivision along Moontown Road, as well as further south, the Pebblebrook Villas residential community, which is off-site, off-map to the south of the real estate on Moontown Road. To the west are individual home sites which front Moontown Road, and then on the other side of Moontown are two neighborhoods within the city of Westfield, both Ashford Place and Andover North. The real estate is currently zoned R1 residential, and the request seeks to rezone the real estate to the Pebblebrook Crossing Plan Development Ordinance, which would have R2 residential as the underlying zoning classification. To this end, uses of the surrounding zoning classifications to the real estate include residential zoning, and the R2 PD rezone request should fall under and be consistent with and compatible with the surrounding residential developments. I don't know if that's set in place, if we could zoom out just a little bit. The next exhibit on display is the site plan for the Pebblebrook Crossing community. It's included behind tab 3 of the paper brochures that we've provided to the council this evening. Some items to note include that access would be from 191st Street, and in this regard, the homes closest to 191st Street will face a frontage road immediately adjacent to 191st Street, so the homes on those lots would front 191st and enhance the appearance from the community from someone traveling along 191st Street. The frontage area would also include a landscape berm and entry feature, examples of which have been provided to the council in your brochures for consideration and input as we move forward through the process. The layout of the site is further directed by objectives, those objectives being maximizing tree preservation, providing visibility of the golf course to lots adjacent to the course, enhancing adjacency to open space, all while limiting the number of lots positioned along the west perimeter of the site. And to this end, there are multiple internal open spaces, those being located here between lots. Within each one of those multiple internal open spaces, there would be a minimum of 28 trees. Those would be canopy trees, and they would provide passive recreation opportunities within those spaces and would be shaded, of course, in the future as those trees mature. Additionally, the wooded area on the southern portion of the site, located here, extends up the western perimeter of the site, approximately this location where you see additional trees. These areas are to be preserved in order to maintain the natural tree cover. The western perimeter will also be supplemented with additional evergreen trees adjacent to this one owner with the home along 191st Street where there aren't any trees that exist on the site today. Likewise, lots have been positioned with side yards. So these lots here have their side yards adjacent to that western perimeter, and there's only 9. And the logic behind that is that we limit the number of lots that would be adjacent to those existing owners who have larger lots along Moontown Road. And that may not seem like a big difference, but if we were to flip the site and reorient it so that there were lots backed up, there would actually be as many as 20 lots along those homes that face Moontown Road rather than the proposed 9. So while there are a lot of constraints and challenges due to this property because of the narrowness of its size, some of the opportunities and the design intent that I've described this evening are things that we took into consideration when laying out the site. That notwithstanding, the applicant will continue to refine and enhance the site design to provide added value for the residents. One idea that we will vet as part of the TAC review process would be perhaps to incorporate a boulevard or median partway down the entry street to break up that long stretch and provide an opportunity for a more unique landscaping opportunity. That would exist in this space here or here. It's also been suggested that we provide some curvature to the roadway design, and I think we can come up with some opportunities and some examples there that meet those expectations that have been delivered and described to us to this point. Another opportunity to create some variation is to vary the front building setback so that there's not everybody's placed on the same line. Typically, when you have a 25-foot front yard, everybody's up to that 25-foot front yard. So we might look at a variety that would be identified on the plat as a 21, 23, 25, 27-foot front yard. So there's some variety. It doesn't roll, but there's some variety there that creates some additional offsets that'll enhance the views of those homes from the street. Regarding home architecture, character photos have been provided. These are photos that are also included under tab 4 of your brochures. As noted, Dries is the proposed home builder. The Pebblebrook Crossing community will consist of a mix of single-family, 2-story and ranch homes, both. All homes will include various elevations and floor plans to provide buyers with multiple choices. Dries believes that the inclusion of various home types, both ranch and 2-story homes, combined with multiple elevations will result in a diverse and visually appealing neighborhood. Dries anticipates homes to range in size from 1,800 to 3,600 square feet, and that would not be including finished basements, which are an option. So the 3,600, 18 to 36 is all above grade. Living space, not including garages. They'd also estimate the average sale price to be approximately $525,000 per home. In conclusion, the request is scheduled for a public hearing before the Planning Commission on March 21st, so we've got about 6 weeks here intervening between now and then. We'd be glad if you reached out to us to sit down individually with council members to receive your additional input before that time occurred. We've got a neighborhood meeting that'll happen in early March, and we will forward out to the council and staff the time, date, and location of that meeting. So if you're interested in attending, you would have that opportunity. We appreciate your time this evening. We would respectfully request your continued input as well as your ushering the item or moving it forward to Plan Commission for consideration and additional discussion on March 21st. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from Mr. Dobashewitz? Mr. O'Connor? Why are we looking this way?
John, that southern piece south of the retention pond, I mean, it's obviously a floodplain for a portion of it, but is there any plan to do anything with the,
It runs pretty
that
parallel
diamond,
to that
yes,
creek
I don't know if there's a plan to do anything with that lower diamond piece or not.
We're going to introduce the public to that space via trail and public gathering space adjacent to the pond. What I forgot to mention, there'll also be a cart path connection to the Pebblebrook Golf Course, so residents here that had golf carts could also access the cart path and get over to the course to play. So we're gonna try to pull the path. We don't have a plan for any type of paved path through that space. We want to concentrate on tree preservation, but also introduce the public to that space so they can enjoy it and access that area for, you know, a nature walk, something like that.
So you don't plan to do any development in there, just
No, sir.
be trees?
It would remain tree preservation
Okay.
to the extent there are some utilities in that space where the pond's right here, this edge of the pond will be right along the edge of the woods. We might have to clear a couple select trees in that space, but other than that, it's to be left natural.
Okay. And you know, the curvilinear we already talked about, so
Yes, sir.
I'll let you work on that.
Mr. Peterson?
Well, that was my comment. I think I left a message that at first glance, the site plan is unimaginative, I guess would be the word. And I'm glad to hear that you're starting to drill down on how we can add a little bit of interest and break up that long stretch. But right now, it's a little rough.
It is, and the challenge there is, while everyone recognizes we don't live in plan view,
Right.
we're not intending to review it from overhead. So we're going to challenge the developer and the designers with preparing some perspective drawings from certain areas within the community as a streetscape or as a view across an area. So you get a true idea of what you're living it from ground level rather than flyover.
Great. I live in plan world, so that's
I got the house view down from here.
right.
Other comments? Hearing none? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Miscellaneous number 1, the resolution that is with the county and the city. The county has not yet considered this, so we are going to postpone this item until our next meeting. And we need a motion. Thank you, Ms. Lees. Can I have a motion to postpone this item?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to postpone. All those in favor? Raise your right hand. 8-0. Thank you. Miscellaneous number 2, council to consider resolution RC-4-22, a resolution authorizing the carry forward of encumbrances from the prior budget year. Heather Trexler, thank you very much for coming and being with us this evening.
Good evening, Heather Trexler, Chief Accountant. This is a list of contracts that were either signed or items that were purchased in last year, and the projects have not been completed, or the items that we ordered have not been delivered, so we are not able to pay the vendors. So we are asking to move these funds forward into 2022 so we can continue on with the projects and accept delivery. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
And just a clarification that these are not new expenditures, these are items that were already budgeted. And we just
Absolutely.
have not received the invoices to pay them.
Agreed contracts, signed contracts, purchases that have already been agreed upon, nothing new.
Was there a total on here? Is there a total?
Not really, because we had done it by fund. I think it was in the
It's
range of
broken up into
22
little-
million.
Yeah. How many?
I think it was in the range of 22 million.
Any
Madam
questions?
President,
Mr. Smith?
I move to approve Resolution RC-4-22.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve Resolution RC-4-22. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 8-0. And I apologize, I should have moved you up on the agenda. But thanks for coming. Moving on, council to consider Resolution RC-5-22, a resolution authorizing the investment of public funds pursuant to IC 5-13-9-5. Mr. Spalding.
Yes, members of the council, Jeff Spalding, CFO and Controller, and again, on the parade of routine actions, this is another one that to authorize certain activities by the city, the council has to annually authorize the investment of funds that the city might have in CDs around the state, if you will. There's very prescribed rules around how a local unit of government can invest its cash. And within that, for a bunch of historic reasons, it requires an action by the council to be able to invest in CDs of a bank in, say, Terre Haute, or Evansville, or Jeffersonville, or Logansport, or what have you. So that's all this does. We have it in place now. It expires on March 1, and this is just re-upping that authorization.
Any questions of Mr. Spalding?
Do you know how much that investment is?
Do I know how much that investment is?
How much do we annually?
No, because we have everything right now invested in checking accounts at Key Bank and JP Morgan Chase and a few other banks.
Thank you.
Madam President,
Mr. O'Connor.
I would move that we approve Resolution RC-5-22 as presented. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve Resolution RC-5-22. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 8-0. Thank you. Council to consider Resolution RC-6-22, a resolution authorizing the audits and examinations of financial statements prepared on the generally accepted accounting principles basis pursuant to IC 5-11-1-30. Mr. Spalding.
Yes, again, another routine action. This one's relatively new. I believe last year was the first time this requirement was put in place, but the city seeks based on the way we prepare our official financial statements, a more complex audit than the general typical audit by the State Board of Accounts. And now what has been put in place is in requesting that more comprehensive audit, the State Board of Accounts requires a council action to say, we want to be audited that way, and then I submit that along with the request for the comprehensive audit.
Questions of Mr. Spalding?
Madam President,
Mr. O'Connor.
I'd move we approve Resolution RC-6-22 as presented. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve Resolution RC-6-22 as presented. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 8-0. And council to receive a summary of fiscally neutral year-end appropriations pursuant to Resolution RC-73-21. Mr. Barris.
Yeah, thank you, council members. Sam Barris, Office of Finance and Accounting. So again, as Jeff was saying, we have a series of routine actions on the agenda tonight. This is another one. As we've talked about in several different contexts in front of this body, council has now for several years been approving a resolution that authorizes the controller and his office to make fiscally neutral appropriation transfers at the end of the year so that there are no negative appropriation balances when we close the fiscal year. And this is so that we're in full compliance with state law DLGF requirements. So with that said, we've gone through that process. We have transferred money from departments that had surpluses or from contingency, if that was applicable, to make sure that there were no negative appropriation balances in any department's budget. And we are required per that resolution to report those transfer actions back to this body. So, with that said, there is a table summarizing what we've done. Most of them are very minor, so I'm not going to go into them in detail. I will just say that it is our goal to have these be as minimal and small dollar as possible. And, we pursue that throughout the course of the whole year by making sure departments are bringing their budget issues to council for approval or going through kind of regular order to get those actions taken care of. But some things do slip through the cracks at the end of the year, and that's what this fiscal administration resolution is for. So in total, we have a little over $300,000 that were transferred around within the existing budget. However, over 80% of that, almost $250,000, was within the short-term bonds debt service fund. So our office tries to allocate out that debt service payment to whichever departments actually use the money so that our books kind of show, hey, that debt service was for streets or for whatever it was used on. And so, per law, we have to also make sure that our budget matches up with how we allocated those debt service payments. So if you just focus on the operational funds, put aside the debt service issue for a moment, the total transfers were about $50,000. Last year, for context, the transfers within operational funds were about $170,000. Before that, I think it was closer to $800,000. So we are trying to move the needle in making sure that these budget issues are handled proactively. But that said, I'm happy to answer any questions about the list, or if you see something on here you want to email us about, feel free to do that as well.
Any questions for Mr. Barris?
It just seems like for a $90 million organization, this is a really, really accurate projection. To be only this much is really kind of amazing, and really a great job by your team.
Here, here.
Anything else? Yes, I would agree that it's terrific that we're at $50,000 versus where we have been in the past several years.
And it's a credit, to our department staff and directors for making sure they're identifying issues as they come up. And, and even a couple years ago, we'd get to the end of the year and uncover, significant issues that had occurred potentially very early in the year that were not addressed. So we're happy to be past that and showing some improvement.
Great work. Thank you very much. This is a report for information, so there's no action on this?
Correct, that's correct.
Next is transfer. Council to consider transfer TA-05-22, an appropriation transfer in the general fund to increase the city's contribution to its property and casualty self-insurance loss fund. Mr. Barris.
So thank you again, Sam Barris, Office of Finance and Accounting. We just talked about some areas in which our budgeting procedures have gotten better over time. But we still have shortcomings, and there still are unknown factors that come into play, after the point in which we approve our budget. So every year we budget for costs associated with property and casualty insurance. So we both have a self-insurance fund that we pay claims out of, and then we also pay a stop-loss insurance premium to our insurance provider. And due to a couple different factors, the amount that we budgeted for 2022 is going to be insufficient, we believe, to contribute to that loss fund and the insurance premium payment. That's essentially reflecting higher than expected claims that were needed to be paid throughout 2021, which in turn have a knock-on effect on our insurance premium that we have to pay. And so I think we budgeted about $870,000 for 2022. We're asking for a transfer from non-departmental contingency to actually, it's a little weird, but the Board of Works budget, which is where we make these insurance contributions from, of $165,000. So it's not a budget increase, but we are tapping into our approximately $400,000 of remaining general fund non-personal services contingency to make this contribution. So happy to answer any questions. Of course, Mr. Spalding is happy to answer questions as well, depending on the level of detail.
Mr. O'Connor.
So Sam, we make this transfer, what's the approximate balance in the fund going to be? Where is it and where does it go to?
Yeah, so I can't tell you what the balance is going to be off the top of my head, but what I will say is that, our goal is to have enough money in this fund in order to be able to pay out, a year's worth of claims potentially. So we're basically trying to project how much our payments are going to potentially be over the year and have enough money to cover those costs.
Since you didn't get the benefit of a finance committee meeting this cycle.
Mr. Spalding, could you please come forward?
That, specifically that number that we're aiming at for this loss fund that Sam referenced is $760,000 is what we, and I could go into a lengthy explanation of why that is,
After
but
the meeting.
that is the number that we're
We'll have to
targeting.
clear that with the
Yeah.
president.
Anyone who's interested, I'm sure, would be happy to hear Mr. Spalding's
Yes.
explanation.
It does say as whereas 399,000 will remain in contingency remains available, if that answers your question.
Yeah, I was just curious what and losses come and go, and so your premiums are gonna be based on loss experience, and we're not here for an insurance seminar, but, if you're self-insured, this is gonna happen. It goes up and it goes down. But,
Right.
with that, I will make a motion to approve TA-05-22 as presented.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to approve transfer TA-05-22. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 8-0. Thank you. Council to consider transfer TC-01-22, a cash transfer from the rainy day fund to the general fund. Mr. Spalding.
Yes, Madam President, members of the council, this action, the best way I can describe it is I don't know why that doesn't show up straighter on there. This action is really essentially a non-action action, but I can explain the rationale, and I have a graphic presentation here that illustrates it a little bit more, but let me first just describe it. Basically, what I'm doing is making a cash transfer from our rainy day fund to our general fund, and that sounds like, oh, that is something that is we're doing that to accomplish something. Well, I guess we are, but it's very technical. The way that the council has always been presented most of our financial information, and frankly, the way I look at it, is we show the rainy day fund and general fund combined and show the balances in both of those funds and look at our financial situation that way, and because that's really all of our really flexible reserves. But the truth of the matter is they are two separate funds, and our regulatory agency, so to say, is the Department of Local Government Finance, and they look at them as two separate funds. And so without getting into the details of this, from time to time, there are issues that come up in my working with our regulators on the general fund versus the rainy day fund, where those balances make a difference. And so what I'm doing is I'm actually taking enough cash, moving it from the rainy day fund to the general fund so that it has the cash balance that we define in the fiscal plan is the minimum cash balance for cash flow reasons. And that's what we accomplish. Right now, again, when we combine it, I just don't worry about that. But if you break them apart, you would want so much in the rainy day fund and so much in the general fund. This is doing that. And then the graphic that I presented, which I guess is on the screen in front of you and up here on the wall too, is what you can see is that the top line is this green line that basically says, here's what it looks like the combined balances would be doing and the way we look at things. And actually this drop from 21 to 22, if you'll recall, there is a strategic spend down in the budget where we've said, hey, we built up a lot of reserves and we want to spend them. Well, what is happening is if you look at the yellow line, which is the general fund, and the blue line, which is the rainy day fund, they were pretty close in balances, back in 2019. And as you move forward based on a series of factors, if we were not doing this transfer, you'd see the general fund balance going down to here and the rainy day balance going up to here. And I'm just making a transfer to pull them back a little bit closer together. Like I said, doesn't change anything about the finances of the city, but makes my life with the DLGF a little bit simpler. So happy to answer any questions.
Mr. O'Connor.
So Jeff, how does DLGF determine what is an adequate amount in the general fund?
They don't do it quite that way. What they do is when you're requesting your budget, they have to approve your budget and tax rates. And what they do is they say, hey, do you have enough money in that fund to support the appropriations that you're presenting? And when they factor that in, they look at both your prior year reversions that you're carrying forward and your total appropriations and your cash balance in the fund, and say, you need to be able to cover all of these. What they don't look at, and this gets fairly complicated, but we talk about reversions in the fiscal plan, because we know that we won't spend all of the money that gets appropriated for a variety of reasons. They don't look at that at all. So at times, if you let the balance in of a fund get too low from their perspective, they will say, you don't have enough money in that fund to support your budget, and this keeps that from happening. If I just build that balance up in the general fund, then I don't have to worry about that issue. When I take the budget that you folks adopt and present it to the DLGF for them to say, yes, it was okay for you to adopt that budget, they won't give me any guff, basically, so.
Mr. Ayer.
Mr. Spalding, this doesn't give me an amount that you're transferring out of the, what's the amount you're going to transfer?
It says it is on there, but it's buried. It's like 7.7 million, I think.
It's buried?
Yeah.
On the graph.
Oh, it's on the ground.
It was on the sheet.
Yeah.
It's on the sheet.
Yeah.
Go.
I don't have it right in front of me, but it's not highlighted like it is on a lot of the fiscal actions.
Oh,
It's the last.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions of Mr. Spalding?
Madam President,
Mr. O'Connor?
I'd move that we approve TC-01-22 as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve transfer TC-01-22. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 8-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Council comments.
I have one.
Mr. Smith?
I just wanted to thank the public safety team, the communications team, and the street department for the way that they handled snow removal last week. I heard nothing but compliments on social media, which is a rare occurrence. So kudos to everyone.
I would echo those comments that the street department and everyone came together. Parks Department, wastewater, everyone jumped in together to help clear those streets and make Noblesville very enjoyable in the snowstorm and afterwards. Anyone else? Motion to adjourn, or we are adjourned.